Welcome to the WriterDojo with your hosts, Steve Diamond
Hola.
and Larry Correia.
I didn't think of anything to say.
Oh, at least you're here.
Today's episode, Conventions, Round 1.
I barely.
All right. Welcome back to the Writer Dojo. Glad to be back with you again. So Larry, today, I just got back from a convention. And so what I wanted for us to talk about today, you and I, we've been to hundreds of conventions.
Hundreds of conventions, literally.
And together, I mean, you and I attending the same cons together, it's been dozens and dozens.
Yeah,
for us.
easily.
And we're often on the same panels and stuff like that. However, we weren't always the guys on the panels talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's kind of like, you mean there's like different levels.
There's different levels to these conventions. And so this is going to be kind of a part one, and there'll be a part two later where we talk about conventions. The one I want to focus on today, though, Larry, is more or less when you go to a convention for your first time, second time, whatever, what is it that you should be trying to get out of the experience?
Yeah, because there's kind of like this evolution as you go in your career of what you get out of this stuff when you're first starting out and you're a total noob, and what you're getting out of it after you're experienced, and what you're getting out of it once you're the rock star of it. So it's a very different thing. So I guess let's start out at the beginning. It's like a Pokemon evolution.
Right. Okay. My first convention.
So you're just the little cute Pokemon at this time.
I'm the starter Pokemon. You know, there's always two or three, right? We're the starter ones. My first convention was in 2006, and it was Worldcon, very first one I ever went to. And I went there. This was when Brandon was nominated for the Campbell Award, when Brandon Sanderson for Elantris.
Yeah, and that Campbell Award, so you guys know, is Best New Writer. So this is Brandon Sanderson, who's now one of the most famous writers on Earth. Mm-hmm. So this one, he was brand new.
Yep, and he lost.
Who did he lose to?
John Scalzi. Now, we laugh. Now, here's what I will say, just so that no one can ever accuse me of being impartial. Scalzi's first book is actually all right.
Yeah, to be fair.
Old Man's War is a solid read. It's very popcorn fiction.
It's Robert Heinlein.
Yeah.
Pastiche.
Yep, I was going to say pastiche. You know, as far as kind of that genre and kind of the super fast-paced, light world building, military fiction. I think Nick Cole and his co-author, what's his name? I can't. Jason.
Yeah, and Spetch.
I think they do it better.
Oh, yeah.
By quite a wide margin.
Yeah.
But all that said, so that was Scalzi. Old Man's War was a fun read. The sequel's not so much. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So my first con, okay, I go to Worldcon. This was the first time I'd ever seen anyone cosplaying. It was a really large dude, dressed as Slave Leia.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, you know, my first experience, and I remember thinking, perhaps I'm in the wrong place. I was in the wrong place, as it turns out. But anyway, so it was a very weird experience. And at the time, Worldcon had a bit more credibility than it does now.
Oh, yeah, they flushed it down the toilet.
They completely flushed it down the toilet in the I would probably say from 2012 on. I mean, probably earlier, really, but all realistically speaking, 2012 on. Especially 2013 with the event that shall not be named.
Oh, of course not.
So, and I attended that one personally. And if later on we decide we want to have an episode about that experience.
One of these days, guys, we'll have an episode about that.
We'll talk about it, because I was at that Worldcon in 2013 when mine and Larry's plan blew up.
When people were sticking pins into the voodoo doll of Larry Correia.
Oh, yeah. It was phenomenal. Anywho, cons are very weird. It was my first experience. And to be clear, I'd never been to any of our local cons before. Nothing. Zero. But I went. Brandon Sanderson talked me into it. That's where I met Dan Wells for the first time. That's where I met Jim Mintz for the first time.
Oh, good dude.
I attended his coffee clutch. So, and we'll talk about a lot of these things. cons are weird. You go there and I think that when you're kind of a newbie, this is the first time you've been, even if it's the first couple you've been to, you don't know what to expect.
No, and also what you're going to get out of it, because some cons are more oriented to different types of things than others. And so I think for when you're the starter Pokemon and you're just launching your career, you're just the Squirtle or whatever. I don't know. I didn't play Pokemon. I'm actually not. I'm making this stuff. One of my kids did. I'm just kind of trying to remember.
You got it right.
But if you're the little cute one and you're going to this stuff, the various types of cons, there's what's considered literary cons, writer cons. So they're cons that are very writer oriented. And of those, some are either fanish, where it's all about people coming and just hanging out with the authors, and others where it's a little more writer con, where you're there to learn to be more of a writer. Those usually are the ones that you get the best bang for your buck as far as the knowledge. Networking, however, is both. And then there's other types of cons that aren't necessarily writer cons, but they have a writer component to them. There used to be some good ones that were game cons, but they had a really good writing track. But then, like all things that go woke, they implode. But there's I'm trying to think. Then there's like your big mega cons, like your
San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, see, in San Diego Comic-Con, I would not recommend for a writer just because it is so super just kind of Hollywood media driven. However, I would recommend like Salt Lake City FanX, which is also a Comic-Con and is a big extravaganza. There's thousands of people in costume and the big party and all that stuff. However, it's also got a really big writing track, so there's quite a few writers in there talking about writing. Yeah. Another one like is Dragon Con, which is a huge, crazy Mardi Gras party. It's Nerd Mardi Gras in Atlanta. However, it also has an amazing writing component too.
At the time, WorldCon capped it like, oh gosh, I think there was, I don't even think that one in 2006 had 5,000 attendees. So it's still fairly small.
It's huge compared to now, though.
But it's gone down. But at the time, the whole point of that convention, at least what they said it was, is that it was a con specifically for people who wanted to become writers. But they also kind of, I don't know, towed the line or straddled the line, because there were a lot of panels where it was Joe Schmo author who was super big, and it was just the panel about him and his work, right? And so it kind of had a lot of that fan kind of element to it. Now, it was my first one, and so I went to both because I wanted to know what was up. The fan panels were complete wastes of time, frankly. And I think that that's mainly because the person running the panel, well, it wasn't even really a panel, it was more of an interview. The person running interviewing the other author was just asking stupid fan questions instead of, so if you and I were at a convention together and I was interviewing you in terms of all your career and stuff, rather than just say, wow, that was really cool that Monster Hunter came out, Larry. And you're like, yeah, it totally was, Steve. Like, those are stupid panels that have no bearing on anything.
You know, actually, so when I'm a guest of honor or one of the big big main guests at one of these events, for those panels, I always don't have a moderator. I don't get an interviewer. And what I usually do is I'll go out, but most authors don't do this, guys, but I'll go out and I'll look at the room and I'll hey, by raise of hands, what are you guys here for? Mm-hmm. And then I never prepare. I never prepare anything ever. And so I'll go out there and I'll ask people what they're into, what they want to talk about. I'll usually have whatever spiel I want to give, and then I'll just take tons of questions from the audience, because the audience questions are almost always valuable. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you got one interviewer, you got that kind of thing. I don't know if I find when I go to cons like that, I look at the stuff that back when this was starting out. For me, I looked at the stuff that I needed to know more about.
Yep.
Even today, like when I go to events, if there's a topic there that is some sort of newer thing that I have no idea what it's about, I will go listen. When I went to the 20 Books in Las Vegas, mm-hmm. which was very business oriented. I really liked that a lot. I actually was there to teach classes. But I was able to attend whatever I felt like. And so I attended several things that was really interesting, because there were like niche things. It was business stuff that I personally didn't know anything about, or there were new types of marketing, new types of networking stuff, Indie publishing stuff, which is not my, I mean, because my indie publishing knowledge is a decade out of date.
Right.
And so I would say when you're going to these events, look at where the holes in your knowledge are and then see if there's stuff there that can fill those gaps.
Right. Now, when I started, I mean, filling the holes in my knowledge, I mean,
Well, all of it.
it was just a giant hole.
It was
There were no in between.
It was just a big donut.
It was a big donut where the part that you're eating didn't exist either. It was just a vapid, empty donut. I knew nothing. At the time, I was working at the bookstore. And I think I've talked about this a little bit before.
Yeah, because you learn a lot of writing by osmosis if if you're a reader.
Yeah.
You know.
And I was at the Walden Books at the time. And at the time we were the #1 ranked Walden Books in the country. And I would go up to different people and say, "Hey, look, yeah, I want to be a writer, but I work at this bookstore that's the #1 ranked one in the country. So would you be interested in what are some of the books that you want to push?" So talking to agents and editors and stuff, it was really easy to approach them.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool that you had that that angle to work there.
And that's how I met Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's how I met Jim Mintz. Jim Mintz, editor at Bain, one of mine and Larry's favorite people. We've roomed with him at Gen Con. He's taken us to many a meal.
Many a dinner, played a lot of RPGs with him. I went to London with him.
Yeah. Jim is freaking great. And he is one of the guys who basically discovered Steve Erickson. Okay. Brought him over to tour back in Ye Olden times when
ago.
Jim was in that realm.
Yeah, Jim was a noob.
Anyway, I wanted to meet Jim Mintz because I was like, man, if this guy found Steve Erickson, he must have pretty good taste. And it turns out I was right. So I attended a coffee clutch. Now, Larry, explain what a coffee clutch is to people.
A coffee clutch is a thing that's usually limited attendance, so you'll need to sign up for it. And it's one author or one of the guests who is some sort of professional. And then they usually put you at a table, like in some sort of like restaurant area or, lunch area. And they'll put you at a table with usually like 10 other people. Ish, I think is what they cap 10, maybe 15 people.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a quiet, intimate discussion where basically you there as the professional you're just going to get asked questions in a pretty casual environment for these people who really want to learn. So sometimes you get like people who are just fans and they just want to hang out and listen to you talk. But a lot of times it's people who want to learn from you and they want to learn. And so you'll have these coffee clutches with writers where people want to learn how you do certain things. Or they'll have editors where people are going to try to pitch stuff to them.
Yep.
They're going to have, publishing houses. They're going to have marketing people. And they're going to have all these different things where they're going to have one expert person. And it's just so if you can sign up for a coffee clutch with somebody that you think is really interesting and cool, do it. And also some of them will surprise you if it's something you think you don't really know who they are, but it's somebody who you think might have some knowledge. Sometimes it's actually really worth it because it's also great networking because there's only like 10 people. It's usually because honestly, guys, I'll say is when you're the person up there in front and you meet like 300 people that day and you've shook 300 hands, you don't remember anybody as far as networking. That's impossible. Your brain can't keep up. Coffee clutch is a little more intimate. You get to talk to people a little more. So we've talked about professional bearing, though. Coffee clutch is definitely one where if you're a dork, they're going to remember you too.
That's right.
So don't be pushy. Don't be rude. Don't be all like, why haven't you bought my book yet?
Yeah.
I submitted to your slush pile 6 months ago and I haven't heard anything. Don't be that guy. That guy, everybody hates that guy. Like you and 10,000 other people have put something in the slush pile at that time.
At least. Now, the interesting thing is, if you, as the newbie author, if you comport yourself in a much more professional way and you ask intelligent questions in these settings and stuff, you can actually make that contact. And that person, the Jim Mintzes or whatever, will remember you.
Absolutely.
Now, Jim doesn't remember me. I wasn't there to ask him about writing stuff because at the time, I didn't even know what I didn't even know yet.
Well, you hadn't written hardly anything yet.
I'd written 0 in 2006.
You ain't pitching nothing if you got nothing.
Exactly. However, I had questions for him because I was interested in his thought process as to why he finds certain things really good and why he doesn't and stuff. And he and I have talked about that since. And obviously now it's a whole different ballgame for me. But I think that what this does is this shows you just how much you can learn at a convention in very different ways. Now, when we come back, we'll delve a little bit deeper into it. I know we want to talk about networking,
and BarCon,
networking and BarCon, and
LunchCon.
That's right. If you don't drink, then it's like root beer con or something. Whatever. We'll be right back.
The war between Almacia and the Empire of Kolakovia is in its 100th year. Casualties grow on both sides as the conflict leaves no corner of the world untouched. Illyrian Glaskov's quiet life on the fringes of the Empire is thrown into chaos when an impossible tragedy strikes his village. When he is conscripted into the Tsarist military, he is sent to serve in the Wall, an elite regiment that pilots suits of armors made from the husks of dead golems. But the Great War is not the only, or even the worst, danger facing Illyrian, as he is caught in a millennia-old conflict between two goddesses. He must survive the ravages of trench warfare, horrific monsters from another world, and the treacherous internal politics of the country he serves. New military fantasy from Master of Horror Steve Diamond and international bestseller Larry Correia. On sale March 1st, 2022 on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Pick up or reserve your copy today.
All right, we're back. Okay, Larry. Let's talk about connections and BarCon and LunchCons.
Yeah, so there's two levels of networking at conventions. There's the regular official level where you go to these things and you kind of hang out at events and you talk to people in the hall and you listen to the panels and you go to the coffee clutches and that kind of thing. Then there's BarCon. That's usually after hours when people are just sitting around and a lot of books have been pitched to editors because somebody bought them a drink. Because human beings were social, we make conversation. Once again, don't be the weird pushy stalker. Or LunchCon. Hey, it's like, I think every panel, every convention I've ever gone to, at some point I wind up having lunch with, it's not an official scheduled event, but I just got to eat food between panels. And I usually wind up with like 10 or 15 fans that were just whoever was there. And we wind up eating lunch together at whatever is the most convenient thing. And, you get to pick a lot of people's brains that way. I've had some great conversations when I was starting out. Really good information from people.
Well, remember, actually, the convention that you and I met. LTE back in
we ate lunch together.
Early 2009 or something like that.
A long time ago, yeah.
Maybe it was 2008. I don't know. Somewhere
in there. 2008.
It was, it wasn't lunch, it was dinner. Me and you, our buddy Paul Janess, and like 18 million other people.
Did we eat Italian? We ate at an Italian place?
We ate at Carrabba's.
Yeah.
Great Italian place if you're in downtown Provo, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good place.
Pretty good Italian. Good pork chops. Anywho, you and I just ended up sitting together. And I think, had I already interviewed you? I think maybe I'd already interviewed you.
I think that might have been the con. You might have interviewed me even that day or maybe the next day.
And then we ended up sitting next to each other. And that was when you and I really we were just chatting. We were just talking.
Yeah.
And that was when we both discovered, of course, as we alluded to in our very, very first episode, we gave each other the secret accountant handshake, and all of a sudden we were best of buds.
Yeah, once we both discovered we were both accountants, then we stopped talking about books and just started talking about our accounting jobs.
Yeah, it was, but it's, you never know, is my point.
Because think about, though, for the networking perspective from that moment on, so you're still a new guy, and I was medium new guy. I had
I think you had one or two books out.
Yeah, I think I had one out and like 1 or 2 under contract. So I was kind of new. I was very new, and you were like total new.
I was new.
Well, but then career-wise, how much have we done together over the years since?
So much. I mean, apart from the whole writing stuff that we do together, we literally, our day jobs were together for 1.5 years.
Yeah, we worked together for a long time after this because this is just the power of networking.
Yeah.
And so honestly, I find the most valuable thing at these conventions is not the official stuff, it's the unofficial stuff. It's the hanging out. It's the being yourself, being cool. And you want to be yourself because if you really want to network, you don't want to be fake. I mean, it's the old LDS saying is be yourself, but be your better self.
Right.
So, be good. The example I wanted to tell you, this is something I mentioned over the break, was my Dave Butler story.
Okay.
So we love Dave Butler, and Dave Butler now is a pretty successful author. He's written...
he's read. He's the thing that I love about Dave Butler's writing is he brings a little, it's almost like the hard science fiction authors that bring their intelligence into their writing. He does that, but for fantasy.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Dave is a history nut.
Yeah.
And he is hardcore intellectual,
Yeah.
but he's like a down to earth, practical dude. So Dave gets like deep into the weeds of philosophical stuff, but he still writes these fun, actiony books. So I love Dave. But so when Dave was first starting out, he was smart. And Dave was a lawyer. He had this business background, and he looked at this con, and he's like, I really want to get in there and really get to know these writers, but and find out what to do. But I want to kind of like not go through the sea of stuff I don't know what to do with, and like all these panels, I don't know if they're any good. So Dave found out where the green room was where the writers hang out, like between panels, so eating lunch or whatever.
Okay.
He went to a sandwich shop and bought like $200 worth of sandwiches. He bought like this giant jumbo thing of subs, right? Yeah, it was one of that sub place there is in Provo.
Oh, the one right behind?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Dave comes in with like
sandwiches is what it's called.
Sensuous sandwich.
It's amazing.
It's actually a good sandwich place. So Dave comes in with like $200 worth of subs. And just like, of course, no one's going to turn away the guy who's walking up with armfuls of subs. And so he wound up hanging out in the green room like all day, just feeding authors subs.
Good play.
And getting to know people.
Yeah.
He's a really good friend of mine now, but I'm pretty sure that's the first time I ever met Dave. And here's a further example, because this one, he was brand new starting out. A further example of this from the same guy. It just shows the power of hustle events. So I knew Dave at this point, and I had done some stuff with him in Utah, and I really liked him, and he wasn't just because he bought me sandwiches. We actually wound up hanging out afterwards. And we were at another con. I can't remember what con it was. And Tony Weisskopf was there, who now publishes Dave. So the first time Dave ever met Tony, I didn't introduce him because I missed the chance to introduce him by about 15 minutes. Because what happened is Tony had an event in the morning where it was just like, hey, Tony Weisskopf needs to exercise, so she's going for a walk. If anybody would like to walk with Tony Weisskopf, the editor, in the morning during this con, show up at the parking lot at this time.
Oh, man.
So Dave did.
Smart man.
So Dave went for a walk with Tony Weisskopf. And then, and he introduced himself and talked to her, and he stands out because he's like 6'8".
Yeah.
I used to say that I wasn't the best writer, but I was the tallest writer, and then Dave came along.
I know.
But then as they were getting back from the walk, I saw Dave and I saw Tony. I was like, "Oh, hey, Tony," because I know it's Tony super good, and I was like, "Hey, Tony, this is Dave Butler," and Tony's like, "I just talked to Dave," and so that just shows and he now writes there. He writes for her, but that just kind of shows the power of networking, getting yourself out there, getting known that you're an approachable, normal human being that these people could work with.
My story with Tony was, it was that Worldcon we went to, I think that was 2011, the Reno one.
Oh, right? Yeah, the one where I decided to burn it all down.
Yeah, it was after it was on our way home that we decided that.
Because I was I came out of there so disillusioned and heartbroken and disgruntled that I was like, I have been lied to my entire life, and now they must pay.
Right. Now, yeah. And
we'll have a whole episode about that.
We'll have a whole episode. But when we got to that convention, we drove there, and we're in the kind of the main convention area, and we're just sitting there. It's me and you, and I feel like there were a couple other people with us.
I can't even remember now.
But all of a sudden, this lady.
I remember we wrecked the rental car, and you were the only one that pitched in.
Oh, yeah.
Because I rented a car, and I was paying for it. It was on my card.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and then somebody hit the rental car in the parking lot and tore it up, and it was like a big bill to pay for the rental car, and you were the only one of the guys that we were sharing that car. You were the only one that chipped in.
Well, again,
that's why I forgot everybody else.
This is the value of networking, people. If you're a good person and you happen to be around somewhere where someone's car gets wrecked and and you help pay them off, they remember. Well, hypothetically speaking,
the rental was in my name, and everybody else who I was driving around, they didn't. Yeah. I didn't see a word, but Steve chipped in money.
Jeez.
Yep.
I forgot all about that.
Yep.
I remember.
You want to talk about character?
Oh my gosh. So you and I are sitting there. We're just chilling. I think we've checked in. And this lady comes over and sits down next to us and starts talking to you. And I'm like, what the crap? Who's this lady to muscle in and get on our conversation? And you said, oh, Steve, this is Tony Weisskopf, the head honcho at Bain. And I swiftly said, oh, so actually I'm the outsider. Okay. And I went to introduce myself. I said, oh, hey, Tony, I'm Steve Diamond. at the time, I run elitist book reviews, and she goes, "Oh, yeah, I know you." She's like, "Yeah, you wrote this review and this review and this review," and she remembered these things, and that was my first exposure to Tony Weisskopf. And since then, every conversation I've had with her has been wonderful. She gave me my first professional edit on a short story, but it all goes back to you as the newbie person. How are you comporting yourself? How are you acting to people? Are you being, as Larry's put it, the weird psycho stalker? Or are you being the person that is, that has class, has character? And I'm not saying you don't have, I'm not saying you can't be yourself and be a little weird, because we're all weird to one degree or another.
When I say professional, it's by writer standards.
Yeah. I mean, did you take a shower that morning?
Yes, please, guys, just shower. Don't be gross.
Here's what I will say. If you're a newbie author, or a wannabe author, whatever you want to call it, there's a few items on the checklist that will set you apart from everyone else at the convention. Especially if you're going to these coffee clutches where you're meeting people, or you're going to these beginner panels where you want to learn things and you're meeting the authors after. Maybe you're a little bit further along and you're going to pitch sessions where you can pitch your novel and stuff like that. Very valuable. All those are very good, depending on the person you're pitching to. If you dress just a smidge nicer than the average, you trim yourself up a little bit.
Don't look like a slob.
Don't look like, like you just went out gardening that morning.
Because this is not officially a job interview, but think of it in the way you would think of a job interview, because it kind of is, in that these are the people that you hope to work with in the future. Yeah. And so try to conduct yourself in that manner. And this is something we've been coming at this from a traditional perspective, but even from the indie perspective. When you go to an event that's primarily indie authors, and so basically you are your own boss, so you're not, doing that. These are still people that you might want to work with in the future or team up with.
Yeah.
We talked about in the collaboration episode, this is the time you meet potential collaborators. Yep. This is the time where you meet other people that you're going to invite to anthologies. Mm-hmm. If you guys are going to do projects, because if you've met somebody and they're a complete weirdo, you're not going to invite them to be in a project.
Well, and you and I have both met those people.
Oh yeah,
we've seen those people. We've had those people come in and talk to us. And there's this mental checklist where I might not remember the guy's name, but as soon as I see their picture, I know exactly who it is. And it's like, no, I'm not inviting that dude, or I'm not inviting that gal anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deal with that.
No, because here's the thing, because when I'm running a project, whether I'm the editor or whatever, and I'm running a project and I think that this person is going to cause drama in my life and make my project not fun to do and cause me more work and hours, because here's the thing, I got 10 other people who are, they're capable of doing it too. And I don't have to deal with any of their weirdness.
Well, and conversely, we've met the people that have been really freaking awesome. So Dave Butler in the beginning, right? We both met Dave really, really early on. And I think it's pretty safe to say that as soon as we met him, we were like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Any project that that this guy is appropriate for, I'd have no problem.
Exactly.
And also, one thing you got to realize too is, even if it's a person that's not necessarily the person that you're going to work with, that person knows you and might remember the Laurel K. Hamilton thing.
That's right.
So one time, I love Laurel. So one time, Laurel was here in Utah at an event, and she was a guest, and she was working on an anthology called Fantastic Hope. It was hopeful science fiction and fantasy stories. And
that's why I didn't get in.
Yeah, I know. Really, it was.
I wasn't hopeful enough in my story.
But what happened was, I was talking to Laurel, and that morning, she had gotten hosed on several of the people that she had invited flaked.
I mean, it was a substantial number. She was well and truly hosed.
It was bad, because what happened was, it was just and she was getting fairly far into the process, didn't have a lot of time left. So she had maybe a month to get these stories in. And she's like, oh, my project's in trouble because I had this many people I invited just not fulfill their responsibilities. But the thing was, she was at this event in Utah where I know a lot of writers.
And she knew none.
Right, because she's not local.
Right.
So this was a scene that I was at, and so I looked around, and so I'm talking to her about this, and I'm like, well, that's doable. I was like, that's doable. I was like, because I was already in there. I was already doing a story for her, is why she was telling me about this. And so I said, well, hang on a second. I know a bunch of people, and so I started looking around the room. As people are walking through the room, I was like, hey, oh, wait. And I see a guy. And I think like Pat Tracy was walking by.
Hey, Butler, get over here. Get over here.
And so I would see people walking by who I knew, who I respected, who I knew were professional, who I knew could produce, who I knew were, because I had dealt with them and I knew their backgrounds and I knew they had a work ethic. And so when there was this crisis emergency thing and this really successful author is in a lurch, we were able to fill her the rest of her anthology that afternoon.
Oh, yeah. And the turnaround on the story, I mean, I was invited also to submit. I didn't get in case you're all confused out there, why someone like me didn't get into an anthology called Fantastic Hope. It's because I don't do that.
Read Servants of War and you'll understand why Steve did not get into the Fantastic Hope anthology.
No.
Whereas my story was like this happy, feel good, like uplifting
Hitman,
time traveling hitman is what it was. I basically wrote Chris Traeger from Parks and Rec as the Terminator is what I did, and it was fantastic. I love that story.
Well, and and I tried to retrofit a story I had, but even then, it was a pretty dark short story anyway.
Yeah.
And it's in, I believe it's in my, is it in my?
Hellhounds?
I think it's in my Hellhounds collection. Cool. So I just had a short story collection come out. Like it's officially out, Audible, or not Audible, but I'm trying to record it myself for Audible. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But ebook, physical book, whatever, you can get it on Amazon. Anyway, it's called What Hellhounds Dream. And I put the story in there, but man, I just don't write hopeful. But anyway,
sometimes
here's the point.
Sometimes even good authors just aren't the right fit for a theme.
And we'll talk about submitting stories to an anthology as another topic later. We have that on the list. But here's the point that we want to make here. Those connections. Okay, at the time, Pat Tracy, right? Pat Tracy's a wonderful friend of ours.
The single most talented author I know who's not big. He's not. He should be. And he's not.
If that guy, the moment he decides to sit down and write a full form novel and puts it out there, I mean, it'll be better written than just about everything.
I'm not joking, guys. This dude, his brain does not work like yours. He is one of the best wordsmiths, bar none, I have ever seen.
I put him in the same category as Guy Gabriel Kay.
Yeah.
Very historically bent, able to put beauty and horror and crassness.
You know who
together.
else is like that? Christopher Rocchio.
Chris is great.
Have you read his stuff?
Mm-hmm. I just started the first one.
My gosh. Every turn of phrase, he's like Pat in that every single turn of phrase is poetry. Mm-hmm. It's the opposite of me.
Yeah, I'm function over form.
I'm what's called workmanlike prose.
Yeah. So all of these people that you meet, at the time, Pat Tracy had 0 credits, I think, or maybe
a couple. He did Crimson Pact.
He had one professional credit.
Well,
at the time.
He did Sakura.
Okay, so 2. So he had Sakura, and then he had the story in Noir Fatale, which came out like right at that same convention.
Yep.
So he had 2 professional credits to his name. Okay, and because of who he is, because we love and respect Pat, this big super megastar author comes and is like, help emergency. We all say, hey, all right, hey, Pat, get in here.
Which is how a guy with very few credits winds up in a anthology with like 7 New York Times bestsellers.
It's really interesting. And here's what I want to point out to you guys. We've talked about going to conventions and stuff, and we haven't really talked about the types of panels you should go to.
Yeah, we should probably talk about that real fast.
We'll talk about that really quick, but my point here is it's more important who you meet and how you behave at these things. And there's a point I want to make once we start talking about panels that was actually made to me at this one that I just went to, which was, so panels. The first panels I always went to, Larry, were, it was how to plot versus, I mean, no one ever has a panel on discovery writing. They should. They really should.
Probably should actually, yeah.
Just because, or a presentation. Like, for example, if you and I went to a con, I think you and I should put on a presentation where you talk about the outlining and I talk about the discovery writing.
Yeah,
You know, it'd be great.
We've done. I know as like we talk about the types of panels you go to, like the plotting ones. I like the nuts and bolts panels.
Mhm.
I think if you're starting out, if there's a business panel, you by all means, we've done a business episode for a reason because that's
Oh my
the
gosh.
most neglected thing.
I was on 2 business panels this weekend, and it was funny. I ended up seeing the same people in both of them, pretty
Yep.
much. And the thing that came to my mind the most is you guys have a leg up, because, yeah, I mean the creativeness is all good and stuff, but you can learn that. The business, if you have that nailed down from the start, you've got a leg up on everybody else.
Yep. One of the things I've noticed is I've been doing this long enough. I can usually pick out of the audience the people that are like going to make it. I know that sounds weird because I don't know. I've never read the guy's stuff. It might be complete garbage, but I can always tell the people who actually care and are engaged and are learning.
Yeah.
Versus the ones who I'm at this thing because I know everything, which is, that's fine too. If you actually are really, really smart and clever on your own, that's fine. I'm not saying, you're bad or anything. I'm just saying I can usually pick out, especially if you've gone to, you've seen the same people at a few. That said, there's also people who attend these things who will never be writers,
Right.
because they're simply kind of in love with the idea of being writers as opposed to actually doing the work to be writers. And that's fine too. Everybody needs a hobby. If you like to go to these things and just to go to these things, that's awesome. And we have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who aren't writers. You know, that's awesome. But also, my only problem with those people is if you're going to be going to all these cons, don't present yourself as something you're not. The problem I see is a lot of people who haven't done anything, they start because they've gone to these things so much, they start presenting themselves as if they are in a position to give advice, and they're just dilettantes. So it doesn't really work.
Yeah, and we've been on, and we'll talk about this in a future one where we talk about attending cons as a professional now. And the difference is how you deal with those sorts of people. But
and I could tell some crazy stories.
As can I. Now, so there's a lot of the basic ones. I found to me, I personally, and look, the listeners out there, they might find this to each their own. There's no one way. But the writing fantasy, like an hour-long panel of that, you're not, I don't know that you're going to get a lot out of that.
Well, the problem with a lot of those is a lot of panels tend to go very academic as opposed to nuts and bolts. And so this is something I know you're going to bring up in a second about, but look at who's on the panel. Because a lot of times these authors will, especially if you got authors who aren't really authors as much as they're academics, they're professors who've written like a book, and they'll get up there and they'll spend the first 30 minutes of this panel defining the genre. Oh my gosh, kill me now. That is the worst thing ever. What a waste of time.
I mean, gosh, we talked about this in our genre blending, that the only time you really need to care about that is from a marketing standpoint. It's talking about, okay, where's this going to get shelved, or who can I pitch this to?
Or we've pointed out too, it's like the other one, on the really bad writing advice kind of thing is when people start talking about the rules. If you're on a panel and there's that one guy who starts talking about the rules and you can only do things this way, this has been decreed by no, okay, so tune that guy out. Take that advice for what it's worth. Rules are, we've talked about this before on the show a lot. The only rules are don't make it suck, and the readers need to like it. And if your readers like it, then it's okay.
Now, what I found, okay, this con I was at, I started noticing something. I was only scheduled for, I think, 4 or 5 panels. I ended up on like 7 or 8 because that's what happens.
Steve always gets drafted to moderate.
I always get drafted. I only had to moderate 1 panel this time.
Wow.
And it was because the guy letting us use the studio, Craig, it was a panel about infusing like music and lyricism into your writing. But I mean, Craig's a professional musician, freaking rad. And they had him moderating it.
What a waste.
And so Craig approached me. He's like, Steve, I hate to do this, but can you come and like pitch hit moderate for me so that I can actually like talk with authority on this thing? Because here's what you got to understand. When you're attending, generally there's a bunch of panelists and there's one person who's the moderator. if you go to the panel and the person doing the moderating is doing all the talking, you're in the wrong place. That's a bad panel. Flee for your life. Generally, the moderator's there just to ask insightful questions and cut people off when they start going long-winded. So anyway, Craig has that opinion. I have that opinion. I know you do too, Larry. So Craig said, hey, can you step in and do this so I can actually talk about the topic? And I was like, yeah, that's no problem. I'm like, I don't know anything about music, so this is perfect. I'll just ask you questions of things I want to understand. Turned out to be a wonderful panel because Craig was amazing. I think we might have to have him on the show to talk about this specific topic because some of the stuff he said, dude, I have never in my life seen people just get it. What he said. So
I'm
hard.
musically illiterate too, so I think that'd be
Dude, awesome. It was freaking rad.
Yeah, let's do that.
Anywho, my point is, I only had to moderate one panel, which is a change for me. Usually I'm moderating like 10. But I started noticing that from panel to panel, I would look out in the audience and I would see the same people, which in some ways is good. I'm like, oh, all right, cool. Apparently these people have the same interests I do, which is not really the case. Or my other thought was, well, I mean, I must not suck too bad. And then the real thing hit me. I'm like, cool, crap. Now I can't use the same jokes in this panel now. I can't tell the same stories because these people have already heard it. And I made the comment to one of our mutual writer friends. Her name's Christine. She's taught martial arts. She's taught action classes and write action classes. She's ghostwritten for some massive romance authors, stuff like that. She's awesome. She says, oh, well, yeah, that's pretty normal. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, if people are smart when they go to conventions, they don't go to topic that they like. They go from author to author that they like. They find someone who says consistently intelligent things that resonate with them, and you just follow those authors around. And when she said that to me, I thought, dang, that's some freaking good advice for newbies.
It really is.
I mean, shoot. I mean, back in ye olden times when I was a nothing, I'm a little bit above that now, just bit there. I think I'm like an H-list author at this point, Larry.
We should read that on the air one day.
And you, I think, had a handful of books out at the time. And I would go to convention. I mean, we've said we go to the same conventions, and I would follow Larry around from panel to panel because I knew that no matter what he was talking about, I would get something out of it.
That's one of the reasons we decided to start this show, was because over the years I found that a lot of people do follow me from regardless of what the topic is. They would be like, "What's Larry presenting on?" And they would come because they knew. Because we'll talk about this we'll do a part 2 of this, but when you're a professional, some professionals are a little more rambly than others, and some are a little more pragmatic than others.
That's right. So I hope everybody, what you see here is one, there's no, like we say with everything, there's no one right way to attend conventions. My advice is attend maybe a little bit smaller one first, get your feet wet, but go there, go to whatever your local convention is. Look at the schedule, see who the cool guests are, start attending some of the panels on the first day, and find out whose views really resonate with you. And then start signing up for their coffee clutches. Go buy them lunch or something. Offer to bring them a drink when they're on a panel, whatever. You're going to make some great connections. And the great thing is when you start doing that, you're going to find other people who are doing that same thing as you. Find them. Those people are going to become your professional peers, and they're going to become your friends in the genre. I mean, shoot, that's how Larry and I really became friends, was because of this. And now look at us. Now we sit in really small rooms recording things while drinking soda and eating hamburgers. Well, that's it from the WriterDojo. We hope you all like this episode. And again, if you got any questions, shoot them our way. Take it easy, guys.
WriterDojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nivo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
Once again, don't be the weird pushy stalker.